him. "So how's the academy so far?" Irika asked. "Are you enjoying your time there?" "The academy is all right, but teaching those brats in the class is really annoying sometimes," Mizuki responded. Irika laughed at that. "They are not that bad, and some of them are quite talented." "They are still annoying to me," Mizuki responded. "Don't worry, it'll improve with time," Irika said. Mizuki shrugged his shoulders. "You must be pretty high in Hokage-sama's opinion to let you teach a class full of clan heirs. So who would you pick up as the strongest out of all of them?" "I can't compare my students with each other like that. But if I had to pick one, I guess I'd go with one of the students from my last batch. I have never seen a student like him in my entire career. I can't even compare him with anyone else. He was in a league of his own." "Who was he?" Mizuki asked in surprise. "His name is Naruto Uzumaki. He graduated from the academy this year," Irika responded, and even from their vantage point, the genin could see the hate radiating from Mizuki. But Irika appeared not to sense it. "The QB boy," Mizuki said, his voice dark. Irika's face registered surprise. This was also the first time Team 12 had heard him say something different than his normal polite way. "Don't joke like that, Irika. He doesn't even deserve to be a shinobi. I don't understand why Hokage allowed such a thing like that to be won." Irika stood up and looked at Mizuki in anger. "He is not a thing, Mizuki. He is a very kind-hearted boy who had things hard while growing up, and he didn't even let other people's opinions affect him." Mizuki just waved him off. "You don't have to put up an act in front of me, Irika. I understand. You just pretended that in front of the Hokage to get on his good side. You had to be the one who hated him the most. After all, isn't he the one who killed your parents in the attack? But one day I am going to kill that demon, Irika." As this was going on, Naruto continued to observe his target carefully. What Mizuki thought about him didn't matter to him. Mizuki was a traitor and Naruto was going to make him pay for it. Irika tightened his fist and punched Mizuki hard in the face. "I can never see you as my friend from now. I never could have thought that you would be this kind of person. And you will never touch Naruto." Mizuki chuckled darkly and touched his jaw. "Are you seriously fighting me over that monster? The fourth Hokage gave us the chance to kill the demon by sealing it away, and that demon is just waiting for a chance to strike. That's what monsters do. Naruto is the most talented shinobi I have ever seen. But he is also a very hard-working kid. He knows the pain of others. He is not a monster. He is Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure," Irika declared. "Fate. Ah!" Mizuki laughed madly. "You're so pathetic, Irika, siding with the monster. You're useless to me now. I needed power, so I told you to request the Hokage on my behalf to let me serve an academy. But now that I have the information I need, I should just kill you here." And with sudden speed, he launched some kunai at Irika. Irika's reaction looked surprised and slow with fatigue, and before he could do more than dodge, Mizuki summoned a large windmill shuriken and threw it towards him. Irika knew he wouldn't be able to dodge this one in time, and expected the killing blow any second. But the pain never came, because in a flicker of speed, the boy with blonde hair was suddenly standing in front of him, his back facing him. It was Naruto. "You are under arrest for your crimes against the village, Mizuki. Give up. You have nowhere to go. You're surrounded now." Naruto's voice held no emotion. Mizuki appeared shocked from the sudden appearance. At Naruto's words, his teammates appeared beside him, and behind Mizuki, 3 ninja dogs stood growling at him ready for attack. "Look who we have here, Naruto Uzumaki. What a lucky day I have." Mizuki laughed loudly. "Naruto, would you like me to tell you one of the secrets about yourself? The reason why so many grown-ups in the village hate you?" Naruto only looked at him. He understood what Mizuki was trying to do. He was trying to shake him up emotionally so that he could have a chance against him and his team. But Naruto wasn't that weak. "You were told that the fourth killed the QB. But that's not true. Instead, he sealed it in a baby, and that was you, Naruto. You're the QB that attacked the village 10 years ago." Mizuki shouted the words, but seemed surprised by the lack of emotion on Naruto's face. "Come quietly, or we'll have to use force against you," Naruto said very calmly. "Huh?" Mizuki chuckled. "You really are a demon. You can't even show emotions on your face. But don't worry, I will kill you and the others here. You're all no match for me. After all, I am Chunin and you're all genin. I will be held as a hero for killing the demon." Surprising everyone, Mizuki suddenly launched shuriken after shuriken towards Naruto, who was surprised by the sudden attack and couldn't block in time. As countless shurikens stabbed him in every part of his body without pausing, Mizuki raced towards Naruto and drove a kunai into his belly, laughing loudly. Blood jetted out of Naruto's mouth, and the others could only watch in horror. Mizuki yanked his kunai out and took a half-step back before immediately plunging it through the crown of Naruto's head. "I killed the demon," he shouted with crazed laughter. But his laughter turned to shock when Naruto burst open in black feathers. Each and every one of the black feathers then transformed into crows and started to peck the head of Mizuki. Naruto had performed the substitution jutsu at the last moment. Countless crows assaulted his enemy. Mizuki cried out, surrounded by a crowd of beaks so dense that there was no opening for him to flee. The enemy has been caught neatly in Naruto's clone technique. "Now," Naruto shouted from the tree above. Far from the flock of crows, looking down, he could see Mizuki shrieking. He also noticed Yugao and Hana standing stunned in their places, not moving. Tears were falling from Yugao's eyes. Realizing the situation, Shikaku quickly jumped down and was performed hand seals for shadow binding. The Jounin then clocked Mizuki into unconsciousness. Naruto then quickly leapt down from his branch. "Very well done, Naruto." Shikaku complimented him and patted his head, then went towards Iruka to check on him. Hana came out of shock and sent a glare at Naruto. Yugao, on the other hand, kept looking at him and walked up to him and punched him hard in his gut, knocking the wind out him. "Idiot, I thought that he had killed you." Naruto composed himself, then looked at her with a smile and spoke. "I am all right, Yugao. That was just a clone of me." "Jerk, don't ever do something like that ever again," she muttered as she passed him. Then he also walked up to Iruka. Iruka smiled. "You have gotten stronger from before, Naruto. Thanks for saving my life." "It was no problem, Sensei. I am happy that you're safe," Naruto responded with a small smile. "Come on, let's get going. We have to report our mission to Hokage-sama," Shikaku said, and supported Iruka to stand up. Time skipped 3 months. A man had been waving his kunai up at the sky for a while, before Naruto finally placed a gentle hand on his back. "You done yet?" Naruto asked the man. The man's shoulders shot up, as though Naruto's voice had awakened him from a dream, and he whirled around. "The thing you've been trying so desperately to cut in half is my Jinjutsu," Naruto said. What? The man looked at Naruto in confusion. "Do you want to have a dream again?" Naruto asked, his blue eyes icy. "Ee." The man moaned as he dropped his kunai and cowered at the sight of Naruto's eyes. Have mercy," he begged, tears streaming down his face. Naruto kept looking at him. "Naruto," a voice called from behind. Naruto looked back and saw Shikaku coming towards him with Yugao and Hana trailing beside him. "Did you catch him?" Shikaku asked. Naruto nodded and turned his gaze back to the man quailing on the ground. Shikaku came over to stand in front of the man with a heavy sigh, Hana and Yugao behind him. "You can't sneak into the village and misrepresent your history just because you want to be a ninja, you know. That's not how people became ninja." "I am sorry," the man apologized. "By the way, this kid's only 10, Shikaku said. "We got kids like this all over the place. That's the world of ninja." The man's eyes widened. A resident of the Land of Fire had slipped into the village with the intention of beaming a ninja. They were to secure the man and put the fear of the ninja in him. That was their current mission. It was another D-rank mission, the lowest of all the ranks. Supposedly, according to Shikaku, D-rank missions whittled a Genin team into shape, but Naruto couldn't get completely on board with this. It had been 3 months since they had done any decent mission above C rank. The mission to capture Mizuki was the last one, which had been a B rank. Now they were back with their boring D and C rank missions. The routine gave Naruto a growing sense of urgency. Did he really have the time to be doing this sort of thing? There was no way he was actually training himself to master and improve his skills through these sorts of missions. "Way to go, Naruto," Yugao called out, cheerfully patting his back. She was back to her normal behavior now after she and Hana hadn't talked to him properly and had given him a cold shoulder for a month after his stunt during the Mizuki incident. "All right, Let's head back to the village, Shikaku called out. The three Jinin nodded and followed him back towards their village. Hokage office. Excellent work, Team 12, as usual. Another successfully completed mission, Hiruzen said with a smile. After all your continuous missions, I think I'll give you all a 1-week break. Enjoy your time off. They looked at him in surprise, but nodded. Maybe now he'd have time to concentrate on improving his skills, Naruto thought, without having to worry about any missions. Just as they were about to leave the office, the Hokage called to them once again. One more thing, Naruto. There's someone here to meet you. He gave Naruto a slip of paper. Naruto was surprised. Who would be here to meet him? It's not like he knew many people or had outside friends. But he took the paper in his hand and read, and then looked at the Hokage with a raised eyebrow. Why are you giving me an address for a hot spring, Ji-chan? Hiruzen chuckled and shrugged his shoulders before responding. You'll soon figure out when you'll get there. Naruto didn't understand, so he just nodded and turned towards his teammates. I'll see guys later. With that, he exited the office. Naruto walked towards the location indicated on the paper, still wondering who would come to meet him and why they had to meet at a female hot spring. As he got closer to the hot spring, he heard a strange noise coming from somewhere. He looked around to find the source of it before realizing that the strange noise was coming from behind the hot spring walls. Once there, Naruto saw a tall man sitting on a big toad and looking through the walls into the hot spring while giggling perversely and writing down notes. Who was this guy who was peeping at bathing women? He had never seen him in the village before. Naruto walked up to man and said, "Excuse me, sir, but it is not appropriate to peep on women while they are bathing." The man waved him away without looking. "Go away, don't you see I'm doing research?" Naruto tried a couple more times, but the man didn't listen to him. Finally having enough, Naruto said, "If you don't listen to me, then I'll have to arrest you for your inappropriate behavior." This time the man turned to look at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "You're a really funny brat. Tell me your name." Naruto stared at him. "Shouldn't you introduce yourself before asking?" The man grinned and fully turned to face Naruto. Then he started doing some weird kabuki dance in a very dramatic way. "People know me as the mountain toad spirit sage who acquires immortality, also commonly called the Toad Mountain Sage." He jumped from the toad head and landed in front of Naruto. Naruto looked at him like he was crazy. "I didn't even get his name," Naruto muttered to himself. The man was a tall and well-built adult with fair skin. He had a wart on the left side of his nose and waist-length, spiky white hair that he had tied back into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs framing his face. There were red lines under his eyes which extended further down his face. His attire consisted of a green short kimono with matching pants, under which he wore mesh armor that was visible at his wrists and ankles. He also wore handguards, a black belt, wooden sandals, and a red haori. He was carrying a large scroll on his back, and he also wore a horned forehead protector with the kanji 4 oil. "So what is your name, brat? You look a little familiar to me." Naruto looked at him in confusion, but introduced himself. "I am Naruto Uzumaki." The man grinned and said, "You're finally here, brat. I've been waiting for you." He walked up to Naruto and looked at him closely. "Look at you. I couldn't even recognize you now." Naruto realized that this was the person he was supposed to meet here. But how did this man know him? He had never seen him before. "It seems you don't know me. Hasn't Sarutobi-sensei told you about me? I am Jiraiya." Naruto's eyes widened in shock. This was Jiraiya of the legendary Sannin? This man was supposedly his godfather. Naruto had always wanted to meet his relatives, and now, when he was finally face to face with one, he didn't know what to say or feel. Jiraiya had never forgotten about him in his time away from the village. He was still looking after him in his own way and making sure of his needs and sending money for his expenses. And the Hokage had told him that Jiraiya would come back to him when his mission will be completed. Seeing Naruto's expressions, Jiraiya shook his head. He had expected this. He put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and spoke calmly. "Come on, we have a lot to talk about." Naruto and Jiraiya sat on a cliff near a waterfall, and during their conversation, Jiraiya couldn't get a clear read on Naruto. The Hokage had informed him of some of the things about Naruto, and he could see that Naruto had a very sharp mind for his age and a very deep understanding of the things around him. but that was to be expected. After all, you didn't graduate from the academy this early if you were ordinary and already on par with Chunins and some Jounins. Jiraiya could clearly see his former student Minato in him and a little bit of Kushina in looks. So you have any pretty girl in your life? Haha? Jiraiya asked with a perverted grin. Naruto shook his head. I don't have time to waste on such things like that, and besides, I'm still too young for that, Naruto stated with a shake of his head. You really need to open up a bit, Gaki. Naruto changed the topic. Is your mission complete, Jiraiya-sama, that you're back in the village? Jiraiya sighed before he responded. Well, not really. Then he grinned. But I wanted to meet my godson and see what he's been up to. I've heard many things about you. You're making a quite name for yourself. I'm happy that you came to meet me. I always wanted to meet you after Ji-chan told me about you, and thank you for looking after me even if you're not able to be with me. But is that the only reason you're here? Jiraiya shook his head and stood. No. Now come with me, and I'll explain everything in the Hokage office. Naruto stood too, and Jiraiya put a hand on his shoulder and Shunshin with him, disappearing in the wind. Hokage office. Hiruzen was sitting calmly doing paperwork when Jiraiya jumped in the office through the window and Naruto followed behind looking embarrassed at their entry. It's not even a day since you arrived in the village, Jiraiya, and you're already corrupting Naruto with your habits, Hiruzen said with a sigh. Jiraiya grinned and said, I haven't even started yet. Hiruzen just shook his head at Jiraiya's comment. You'll never change. Then he looked at them and asked, So what are you both doing here? Jiraiya got serious. I want to take Naruto out of the village. Naruto looked at him in surprise, and Hiruzen sighed. Jiraiya, I told you before, you can't take Naruto with you. It will be dangerous and can attract a lot of unwanted attention, which we don't want at the moment. Also, what about your mission? At least let me finish, Sensei, Jiraiya said. I found Tsunade's location and I thought it would be good for both Naruto and Tsunade to meet. That woman is drowning in sorrow at the loss of her family and not even aware that her nephew is still alive. I thought it would be good to take the brat to meet her. It won't take too long, so you don't have to worry about anything. Also, it'll give me the chance to teach some wonderful things to Gaki on the road. Jiraiya said the last part with grin. Hiruzen's expression remained serious. Are you sure that you can find her? I am 100% sure. That's why I'm here in the first place, Sensei, Jiraiya stated. Hiruzen nodded after thinking for a moment. All right, you have my permission to take Naruto. I will inform his squad leader. On the road, Jiraiya and Naruto walked silently side by side down the road. It was quite some time since they had left the village. So how's the life of a shinobi treating you? Jiraiya asked. Naruto turned his face to look at him. Not much interesting if you ask me. My team hasn't done many high-ranking missions. Still chasing after cats and helping people with their housework. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Well, that's what Genin teams are supposed to do. You sound like you're in some kind of hurry. I know that, but I want to rise up the ranks as quickly as possible. I don't even get enough time for my personal training because of all the missions. Even in the academy, they didn't teach anything important other than theories. Naruto looked disappointed. Jiraiya started to laugh loudly, and Naruto looked at him in confusion, wondering what was so funny about it. Ha ha. That's exactly what Minato used to complain about. Always wanting to improve. He even graduated from the academy at the same age as you. You really remind me of Minato. At this, a small smile appeared on Naruto's face. Jiraiya-sama, can I ask you something? Jiraiya nodded at him. I was wondering why Tsunade would think that I'm dead. Jiraiya gave a long sigh and said, It's not really her fault in that. She lost everything she holds dear to the village. He shook his head before continuing. After the Kyuubi attack, Tsunade and I were informed by an Umbu that the fourth and his wife died in the attack with their unborn child, and Tsunade left, swearing to never return to the village. After that, Sensei and I tried multiple times to locate her, but it always ended in failure. I understand, Naruto said with a nod. Jiraiya looked at him for a moment. You have to understand that there are people in the village who will do anything just to get you under their control. Naruto looked at him. Someone like Danzo. Jiraiya stopped in his track and looked at Naruto dead in the eyes. How do you know about him? Naruto also stopped and turned fully to face him. Oh, We just crossed paths with each other, and he said hello. This is serious, Naruto? Jiraiya asked, looking serious. Naruto turned on his heels and continued his walk. Don't worry, Shikaka-sensei was there that time. He didn't want to talk about his meeting with that man. He could never forget that moment, and the man's words were still stuck in his head. Jiraiya joined him, but kept quiet. They kept walking quietly for some time before Naruto spoke again. Jiraiya-sama, can you tell me more about Tsunade? Jiraiya laughed loudly. You're showing quite an interest in Tsunade. I'm going to meet her for the first time, so I should be aware of what kind of person she is. I see. So you want to have a good first impression on her, huh? Jiraiya spoke in thinking voice. Well, let's see. In a word, she is unpleasant. Also, she likes to gamble a lot, and she's well known in various countries as the legendary sucker. She's liked to gamble ever since she was young, but her luck and skills just plain suck. She's known by that name since she's been duped out of her money by everyone and borrows money and runs. Naruto looked at him, not believing him one bit, wondering if he was really serious. Then he just shrugged and shook his head and muttered under his breath. What's up with these Sannin? One is a hopeless pervert and one is a gambler. Who knows what kind of person the last Sannin is? It gave him the creeps just thinking about it. We don't even know how long it'll take to find her. Jiraiya nodded. We have to travel a ways, but we won't waste time. Naruto looked at him in confusion. I'll use the time on you as we travel. I am going to train you. Naruto felt shock. You're really going to teach me? This man was a legendary Sannin, one of the strongest shinobi in the world, the one who taught the legendary fought Hokage, and saying he is going to teach him. Of course, Gaki, Jiraiya said, hitting him lightly on his back. Your father was once my student, and I am your godfather. So it's my duty to help make you strong. So what are you going to teach me? He asked happily. I'll tell you later. But right now we are going to the next town. I heard there's a festival going on today. So we'll stop there and gather some information on Tsunade and enjoy a little bit ourselves. Some hours later, when the sky was dark and full of stars, they both arrived in the town. The streets were full of life with people enjoying themselves with family, friends, and lovers. All the shops were also busy, and kids were running around playing games. Naruto looked around in awe. He had never seen anything like this before. I've never been to a place like this. Jiraiya smiled at him. Playing is important too. Get plenty of rest. Then we can move on to training. The festival is going to last a while, so we're going to stay here while it goes on. We're going to do our training here. You can go and look around while I take care of some of my business. Naruto nodded and checked his pocket for money before turning to leave. But before he could, Jiraiya stopped him and spoke. Show me your wallet, Naruto. Naruto turned to look at him in confusion, but nonetheless grabbed the frog wallet from his pocket and handed it to Jiraiya, who took it without hesitation and opened it to look inside. After a moment, he took out some money from the wallet and handed it to Naruto, while keeping the wallet with himself. Naruto counted the money and looked at Jiraiya. It's only 300 ryo? Don't question me like that. Jiraiya scolded him. You know the 3 prohibitions of a ninja, right? But that's my money, Naruto argued. That's not the point here, Jiraiya stated. Those 3 desires make a ninja go bad. The 3 desires are alcohol, women, and money. But that doesn't have much to do with me, Naruto said. I'm not old enough to drink alcohol. I'm too young to get in trouble with women. And I'm not the kind of person who spends unnecessary money. Jiraiya shook his head. Don't take the desire for money lightly. Once you start using it, you'll begin to use more. The power of money is quite scary. Your Aunt Tsunade has nearly ruined her life because of it. So I don't want you to end up like her. You're really comparing me with my aunt, Naruto said, looking at him in deadpan. Besides, as far as I know, you're the one who's easily tempted with the desire for women, Jiraiya-sama. I'm going to finish up my business. Take my pack for me. My toad summon will come to help you if you can't find me. So don't worry about getting lost. Naruto nodded before making his way. Jiraiya smiled and muttered, he is a nice kid. Naruto, meanwhile, looked around and had no idea what he should do. He'd never been to any place like this. Even in Konoha, he hadn't gone to any festival, always preferring his alone time or training. He looked at a shop where some kids around his age were playing ring throwing and balloon targeting games seemingly without any cares in the world. He smiled a little and decided to go join them. But then he stopped in his tracks. He couldn't think like that. He was a shinobi now and should be spending his time in training and improving his skills, not playing around and wasting his time on useless things. He of course knew there is a life outside of training and missions, but he also knew he shouldn't waste his time on it. He looked again at the kids and wondered how different he really was from them. They could play because they didn't have any responsibilities. But he was a shinobi who had to serve his village without any question. They have their family to enjoy with, while he was alone. He wished Yugao was here, so she could drag him around with her. Then he promptly shook his head at that thought. How stupid could he be? She was nothing but trouble. He hesitated a little before finally deciding to play and enjoy himself at least before Jiraiya started his training. At one of the shops, there was a kunai throwing game, and the shopkeeper spoke. You want to give a try, kiddo? Naruto thought for a moment before taking out some money from his pocket and handing it to the man. The man gave Naruto a bunch of wooden kunai. A moment later, he launched all 4 kunai at the same time, hitting the target with each one. The people who were watching cheered for him, and the owner of the shop handed Naruto a teddy bear as a prize. Naruto took the prize in his hand, wondering what use he had for such a thing. Looking around, he noticed a small girl standing with her parents. With a little smile, he handed the teddy to the girl. Here, this is for you. The girl gave a big smile and happily accepted the gift. Thank you, she said, and Naruto smiled back at her. The girl's parents nodded with gratitude. Naruto nodded at them before making his way. A couple of hours later, Naruto was laying in a grassy field with his hands behind his head for support. Away from all the noise, he enjoyed the alone time in peace. Looking at the night sky always took away his worries. His day had started normally. He would never have thought this morning that he would be on the road with his godfather Jiraiya in the search for his aunt by the end of the day. Wonder what those 2 troublesome women are doing back in the village. He thought about his teammates. They would be pissed at him, especially Yugao. He hadn't informed them before leaving the village. He shook his head and wondered what was going on with him. He was thinking about Yugao a lot nowadays. He supposed it was because he liked spending his time with her. She can be annoying sometimes, but he still liked her the way she is. She always managed to bring a smile to his face. Getting out of his thoughts, he realized that it was getting late and that he should search for Jiraiya. On the way back, he bought ice cream for himself and Jiraiya and followed the toad, which he guessed was following Jiraiya's scent. He realized he was close when he heard Jiraiya's booming laughter. When he came to the front of a shop where the sound of laughter was coming from, the toad pointed towards it and vanished in a cloud of smoke. Naruto went inside and saw Jiraiya sitting in the middle of 2 women. Naruto just looked at him with a blank stare. Upon noticing Naruto, Jiraiya said, "Oh, Naruto, did you enjoy all of the festival already?" Naruto didn't respond. Then he noticed his wallet on the table, empty, lying flat. He went and picked it up. It was completely empty. This man was now getting on his nerves. It didn't matter who he was. He had crossed the line this time. Naruto looked at Jiraiya with a death glare, breaking the seal on his eyes to show his 3-tomo Sharingan. Jiraiya laughed nervously. "See, calm down, Naruto. We can talk this out like men. You broke all 3 prohibitions of shinobi in one go. You pervert," Naruto said angrily. He didn't normally lose his emotions, but this man had spent Naruto's whole savings. He started performing hand seals, which scared the ladies. They ran out screaming when he summoned a bunch of crows to start pecking on Jiraiya's head. "Wait, Naruto. Naruto, I'll pay you back, I promise." Naruto only threw the ice cream at him in anger. "You used all the money I worked hard to save, you idiot. What kind of person are you?" He about to throw the second ice cream, but it slipped from his hand and hit the man standing at his back. "What the hell? What you doing, fool?" A man standing next to the one he'd hit with the ice cream shouted at Naruto, who looked back at him in confusion. "You brat, you ruined the boss' brand new suit. That'll cost you 100,000 ryu." "That stupid-looking thing costs 100,000, Jiraiya said. "That's a little on the high side. Do you really think we believe that?" "What? Are you trying to pick a fight? You shouldn't for your own sake. The boss is a former Chunin from the hidden village of the rock. He was feared as a legendary Yamanin." Jiraiya folded his arms and said in mocking tone, "Legendary what?" The man yelled at them, "It looks like you want to get hurt." Jiraiya stood. "Naruto, this is a good opportunity to show you a technique. Watch carefully." Blue chakra started to gather in Jiraiya's palm and started spinning in circles. Naruto looked at the technique in amazement. Then Jiraiya launched his palm forward, hitting the man in the stomach with force and sending him flying backwards into his partner. Wow! Naruto covered his face from the force of the attack and followed Jiraiya outside. "I went easy on you, but you guys sure are weak," Jiraiya said. "You're the legendary Jiraiya of the Sannin," the man said, lying in pain on the ground, noticing the headband on Jiraiya's forehead. He then took out some money from his jacket. "Take this for repairs." Jiraiya took the money and handed to the shopkeeper. "I am also going to take all the balloons too, if that's okay with you." "I don't mind." Naruto was still looking at the man and the place where Jiraiya's attack hit him. What was that jutsu? He had never seen any jutsu where someone channeled chakra outside their body and controlled it. It had been a powerful attack. That was not any ordinary jutsu. "Come on, Naruto," Jiraiya said. "We'll rest for the night and start your training tomorrow." Next morning, Naruto and Jiraiya stood in the clearing facing each other. Naruto was quite excited to start his training today. "Here, take this balloon, Naruto," Jiraiya said, handing Naruto a single water balloon. "What is this for?" Naruto asked, looking at the balloon in his hand in confusion. "You watched that jutsu yesterday that I performed, right? What kind of jutsu did it look like?" Naruto think for a moment before answering. "It looked like you were rotating your chakra on your palm." Jiraiya nodded before taking a water balloon in hand. "Yes, you're right. I was rotating chakra." He showed the water balloon. Naruto noticed that the water inside the balloon was bubbling. Then he activated his Sharingan to look carefully. "You're rotating the water in multiple directions, and the balloon is having difficulty maintaining all the water inside it." The next moment, the balloon burst, and Jiraiya grinned at Naruto. "You pick up fast, Gaki." He nodded. "With the tree climbing exercise, you accumulated and maintained a certain amount of chakra in a needed area. With the water walk exercise, you released a certain amount of chakra. This time you're going to create a flow of chakra. These are just basics for this exercise." Naruto thought for a moment, then looked at Jiraiya. "All I have to do is to create a fast rotation inside the water balloon to pop it." Jiraiya nodded. "Yes, you got that right," he said and turned around. "You continue the training, while I go and get some supplies for us before we move from here. You can also train on the road." It was almost evening. Naruto and Jiraiya were walking on the road, and Naruto still had the balloon in his hand, trying to pop it. It was more difficult than it had looked. Rotating the chakra in multiple directions with his hand was not an easy job. He tried again, this time channeling even more chakra in the balloon and rotating it multiple directions. As a result, the balloon finally burst open, and Jiraiya looked at him with a big smile. "Oh, you finally completed it," he said. Then he handed Naruto more balloons. "Here, do the exercise some more times to get a good hang of it." Naruto nodded and continued the training. After an hour, they rested. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. "So what do I have to do next?" he asked. Jiraiya smirked at him and spoke. "You look excited, but the next step won't be easy." He took out a rubber ball. "For the next step, you have to pop the ball, just like you did with the water balloon." To demonstrate, he popped the ball in his hand. "It's far tougher than the water balloon. But for now, rest a bit, and we'll continue this training tomorrow. Overusing your chakra must be hurting your chakra circulatory system." Naruto was about to protest, but he could feel his body was hurting a bit, so he just nodded. He then looked at Jiraiya. "You haven't told me anything about the jutsu, you know." Jiraiya laughed. "I was waiting for you to ask this." He spoke. "It's called Rasengan. Your father was the one who created this technique. It took him 3 whole years to complete it, and it's a high A-rank jutsu." "My father created this jutsu," Naruto said quietly, thinking over what Jiraiya had told him. His father was considered a genius with no equal. It was no wonder he had created a jutsu such as this. "Don't think too much," Jiraiya said. "Let your body and mind rest for a bit. We still have a long journey up ahead." A week later, they started their journey in search of Tsunade, but they hadn't had any luck yet. The last information they got on her was a dead end. Naruto also hadn't had any luck completing the second step in mastering the Rasengan. Jiraiya had spoken truth when he'd said it was a lot harder than popping the water balloon. With no water inside, it was near impossible to imagine the rotation of chakra and even harder to actually rotate the chakra. Jiraiya was no help either, as he left Naruto alone every day, telling him that if he didn't master it on his own, he'd never grow and would start to depend on others to make it easy for him. On this day, Naruto was again practicing in the forest. His hand was covered in bandages because of the continuous training. How many days have I been repeating the same thing over and over, damn it? He spoke out loud in frustration. Oi, Naruto. He heard Jiraiya and turned to face him. Don't overdo it. Rest for now. We'll leave here tomorrow morning. Did you find anything on her? Naruto asked. Jiraiya grinned and gave him a thumbs up. Of course, Gaki. I'm the best at information gathering in the world. I got her location this time. She's in a small town in Lightning Country. We'll rest for the night and we'll move out early. We don't want to miss her. After 2 days of travel from the last village, Jiraiya and Naruto stood on a mountain overlooking a small town. According to their information, this was where they'd find Tsunade. Yesterday, Naruto had completed the second step toward mastering the Rasengan, but in doing so he had injured his right hand, which was now completely bandaged below the elbow. After that, Jiraiya had strictly forbidden him to do any more training and told him to take it easy until he recovered from the injury. He was disappointed, but Jiraiya had assured him that he would get it in time. After all, the technique was not easy to master. It had taken Naruto's father, who was considered a genius among geniuses, a total of 3 years to complete the jutsu, and Jiraiya had only mastered the same technique after 8 months. But Naruto was determined to master it soon. He didn't have that much time to waste on a single technique. And he was hoping they would find Tsunade soon. After learning that she was the best medic nin in the world, he was hoping she would heal his arm so he could start his training again. He looked up at Jiraiya. Are you sure we'll find her here? Of course, my intel is never wrong. And most importantly, we're in the country that makes the finest sake in the world. So knowing her, I am very positive that we will find her here. Well, if you say so, Naruto said. Come on, let's go, Jiraiya said cheerfully. We have to start somewhere. The following day, after hours of searching, they still hadn't been able to locate Tsunade, and it was already dark. Naruto had known it would be hard to find her, but he never had thought it would be this hard. It was nearly 2 weeks since they had left the Leaf Village, and soon they'd have to return. He couldn't waste his time like this. His team was waiting for him. Now, standing in front of a local bar, Naruto looked at Jiraiya. Are we really going in there, sensei? In their time together, Naruto had finally started addressing Jiraiya as his sensei, since the older ninja had insisted on not being called Sama. Jiraiya nodded. You can gather valuable information from these kinds of places, and we also have a very high chance of finding Tsunade in a place like this. Naruto shook his head and muttered, I can't even count how many bars I've gone to in a single day. Jiraiya started walking towards the bar. Well, come on, Gaki, don't just stand there. With that, Naruto followed him in. After walking inside, he almost crashed into the back of Jiraiya, who had stopped and was standing there with a blank look on his face as he stared at a woman in the bar. A moment later, his sensei yelled and pointed his index finger at the woman. Tsunade. Naruto looked at her in surprise. Her wide eyes mirrored the shocked expression in his. Was this woman Tsunade? Wasn't she supposed to be in her late 40s? This woman was definitely not that old. She couldn't be older than her mid or late 20s. The woman had brown eyes and straight blonde hair that was tied up in 2 loose ponytails. A violet diamond marking was clearly visible on her forehead. She wore a gray kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a broad, dark bluish-gray obi that matched her pants. As Naruto observed her, he suddenly blushed as he noticed her large breasts. He also noticed a nervous-looking woman sitting beside her and a small pig sitting between them. The woman at Tsunade's side had onyx eyes and straight shoulder-length jet black hair with bangs covering her ears and framing her face. Jiraiya regained his composure and walked over to sit down at their table, and Naruto followed suit and sat beside him, still confused. Long time, no see Tsunade, Jiraiya said with a grin. It's good to see you after so long, and you too, Shizun. You have grown quite beautiful. By the look on both women's faces, Naruto could see that their pleasure in this unexpected meeting wasn't mutual. What are you doing here, Jiraiya? Tsunade asked in a voice that clearly showed her annoyance. Can't I simply come to meet my old teammate? Jiraiya said, sounding hurt. Tsunade didn't look impressed. Get to the point already. Jiraiya sighed. I got a message from Sensei for you. She only stared back at him with a blank face. He continued. Sensei has decided to step down from his position, and he wants you to be the next Hokage of the village. Naruto coughed, and the water he was drinking choked him as he snapped his head towards Jiraiya in shock. The same could be said for the two women, who both appeared completely stunned at Jiraiya's declaration. Tsunade narrowed her eyes and spoke in a dangerously low tone. Jiraiya, how dare? Before she could continue, Jiraiya started waving his hand in front of him and interrupted her. Okay, calm down, Heim. I was just joking, there is nothing like that. We were just passing by when I saw you. Tsunade calmed a little but still looked at him with suspicion and anger. Then her eyes finally moved toward Naruto, who was sitting quietly and nervously. He tried not to look at her. You. What is your name, kid, and why do you wear a leaf headband? Are you trying to play ninja? Naruto finally looked up at her and saw an expression of sadness pass across her face. He tried not to show his nervousness. She didn't know that he was her nephew, and he wondered how she would react after learning the truth. My name is Naruto Yuzi dashed. Jiraiya quickly interrupted. His name is Naruto, and he is a genin. Also my apprentice. We're just on a small training trip. Naruto looked at his sensei in confusion, wondering why he had stopped him from giving his full name. He decided to stay quiet for now and let Jiraiya handle this on his own. Tsunade also appeared confused for a moment, but let it pass. She looked at Naruto. Genin, seriously, he looks like a 10 or 11-year-old kid. Jiraiya smirked. Well, he is. He graduated from the academy at the age of 10. Even our sensei spoke very highly of him. Tsunade snorted at that. Then Jiraiya spoke again. But it's good that we came across you too. Shizun, can you please heal Naruto's hand? It got injured while training. Shizun nodded. Of course, Jiraiya-sama. She stood and came to sit next to Naruto, who extended his hand forward. Shizun unwrapped his bandages and started healing his arm. Her hand was glowing green, and the pain in Naruto's arm was quickly subsiding. While healing him, Shizun murmured, What did you get yourself into? This isn't a normal injury. These are chakra burns. These can be dangerous. But when her hand stopped glowing, she said with a smile on her face, All done. But don't put too much strain on it, all right? Naruto looked at his hand in awe. He waved it carefully before he looked at her and said, It feels much better now. Thank you, miss. My name's Shizun. Nice to meet you, Naruto. Shizun smiled, and Naruto nodded in return, grateful for her help. It's getting late, Naruto. You must be tired by now. Jiraiya suddenly said, Shizun, can you please take him with you to the hotel? Tsunade and I will stay a little longer to catch up on the old times, you know. Shizun looked at Tsunade for a moment, who sighed but nodded. Shizun then looked at Jiraiya. All right, Jiraiya-sama. Come on, Naruto-kun. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya, not sure what he was trying to do. They were supposed to find Tsunade, then tell her about him, then head back to the village. What was Jiraiya playing at? Jiraiya noticed his look and said calmly, Just go, Naruto. We'll talk later. Just rest for now. We had a long day today. Naruto said nothing and only nodded before he got up to follow Shizun out of the bar. Jiraiya could handle things on his own. Jiraiya and Tsunade sat together and enjoyed some sake as they talked, just like old friends again. You haven't changed a bit, he said, looking her up and down, his face red. Still the most beautiful woman I have seen in my life. Tsunade peered at him from the corner of her eyes while sipping her drink. And I see you still haven't changed either, still the same old pervert. Huh, Jiraiya laughed. You know me so well, Tsunade. Tsunade shook her head and her expression became serious. Now tell me the real reason you're here, Jiraiya. I know what you said earlier was a lie. I guess I can't fool you. He muttered under his breath with a long sigh. He was wondering what he should tell her, or, more importantly, how he should tell her. I wanted to introduce Naruto. That's why we came all the way here in search of you. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Why go through all this trouble just for that kid to meet me? What are you getting at? Jiraiya knew he had to tell her. He couldn't back down now. After all, this was the reason they had come here. He took a long breath. His name is Naruto Uzumaki. Uzumaki. Tsunade looked at him in confusion. Don't talk nonsense, Jiraiya. You know that's not possible. As far as she remembered, her cousin Kushina was the last to use that name. Jiraiya shook his head before answering. I know how it sounds, but that kid is the child of Minato and Kushina, and your nephew. Tsunade's eyes went wide. She suddenly grabbed his collar and spoke in a firm tone. Don't fuck with me, Jiraiya. I was told their child died on the same night with them. Jiraiya freed himself from her grip, not affected by her outburst. He was used to her moods. He spoke softly. I'm telling the truth, Tsunade. He is really their son. But. Her voice was trembling. She clearly hadn't expected this. She had been living her life alone, fearing the people she held dear would keep dying one after another. After losing her little brother and fiancé Dan in the war, Kushina had been the only family she had left. Tsunade had given her blessings to Kushina when she had married Minato, and when Kushina had become pregnant and asked Tsunade to be by her side at the birth, she had been overjoyed. But halfway into her journey towards the village, Tsunade had received terrible news. She remembered that day as if it were yesterday. An Umbu had come and informed her that the fourth Hokage and his wife had died in the Kyuubi attack with their unborn child. She had cursed the heavens that day for taking everyone she loved away from her. She had cursed the village and the position of Hokage for her loss. She had sworn that she would never again return to the village. But now here was Jiraiya saying that she had a nephew. She remembered Naruto's face, and she knew he was speaking the truth. How could she have missed it? The boy was the exact replica of Minato and Kushina. Why haven't I been told about this before? Why would that Umbu lie to me? Sensei tried multiple times to locate you, but you're a hard one to find. Also, I was told the same thing, but I decided to confirm it with Sensei. He told me that their child was still alive. Tsunade cursed herself. She should have done the same thing, instead of running away. I'm such a fool, she muttered under her breath. His heritage is fully kept secret in the village. Only people close to Minato and Kushina know about him, Jiraiya said. Tsunade looked at him in confusion. Why? Jiraiya hesitated for a moment. He is also the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Minato sealed the beast into his own son to save the village. Because of that, people in the village don't trust Naruto. What? Tsunade was shocked. She knew how difficult life could be to Jinchuriki. She cursed Minato for doing that to his own son. He's a nice kid. I just met him recently. Not arrogant, and always ready to help others. He reminds me of Minato. He even graduated as the Rookie of the Year at the age of 10. They've already started calling him a once-in-a-generation prodigy. Jiraiya smiled. Looks like the world is going to see another powerhouse blonde running around the elemental nations, Tsunade muttered. Naruto had lived his life alone, without any family love. She should have been there with him. After all, she was the only family member he had left. Next day, Rasengan, Naruto shouted, and thrust his arm forward into the rock in front of him. Since his arm was fully healed thanks to Shizune, he was practicing again, but he was having difficulty maintaining its shape. It was a lot harder than he thought it would be, and he was already starting to feel burn marks on his palm again. After waking up that morning, he had waited for Jiraiya for a long time in the hotel room. Finally realizing that his sensei wasn't going to come anytime soon, he decided to go and train on his own. But he hoped they could talk soon. He wanted to go back to the village. Getting out of his thoughts, he tried again, and once more he couldn't get the proper result. Despite the pain in his hand, he was determined to fully master the Rasengan because it was his father's original jutsu. Unknown to Naruto, someone else was in the field and had been watching him for a long time. Sitting on the branch of tree, hidden from his eyes, Tsunade was watching him train. She had been shocked when she saw him practicing the Rasengan and had thought of going there to stop him. In her thoughts, the Rasengan was a very high-level jutsu, and someone as young as Naruto should not be doing the technique. But she decided against it and just observed him. And one thing she could tell was that Jiraiya was right. This kid was different from others and was very talented in the shinobi arts. She wanted to talk to him. Since she had learned about Naruto being her nephew, he hadn't left her thoughts. But she didn't know what she could say to him. Her eyes widened when she saw Naruto thrown back from the force of the jutsu. She was by his side in a moment. "You fool! What are you thinking doing something so reckless?" Looking at his palm, she saw that it was once again covered in burn marks. His chakra is unbelievable, she thought. I have never seen chakra as dense as this, other than in my grandfather. Didn't Shizen tell you to take it easy for the time being? She started healing his injury as she scolded him, her palms glowing with green chakra. Naruto looked at her in confusion, then watched her work on his hand. "I'm all right now," he said. Tsunade stopped her jutsu and considered him, not saying anything for a while. Finally, she stood and held out her hand, helping him to get up. "Can we talk?" Naruto nodded, and they both went to sit in the shade of the tree. But once there, Tsunade's mind went blank, and she was at a loss for what to say. Naruto finally broke the silence. "So, what do you want to talk about?" After a moment of silence, Tsunade spoke. "That jutsu you were practicing earlier was the fourth Hokage's jutsu, the Rasengan." Naruto nodded. "That's quite a high-ranking technique you're trying to master. Are you sure you can perfect it?" "Of course I will master it," Naruto said without any hesitation in his voice. "I just need some time." Tsunade smiled at his confidence. "Yesterday, Jiraiya told me everything." Naruto looked at her. "So, you know about me?" Tsunade nodded. "Look, Naruto, I can't take back what I've done, but I'm really sorry. I should have been with you. Please forgive me. I was too much of a coward." Naruto was silent for a time before he responded. "I know what it feels like to lose someone close to you. I also lost a person who was like my big brother. So I guess I understand what you felt that time. And it's not like I was completely alone in my life. There was Hokage Gigi always looking after me, even now. And I have wonderful teammates and sensei, though they can be idiots sometimes." Tsunade smiled softly. "I see you're very mature for your age. I don't know what you've been through in your life, but I do regret my actions back then." Naruto shook his head. "You can't regret your past. People should move on with their lives. If they don't, they're not developing." "It's not that easy, Naruto," Tsunade said, amused that such a young boy was giving her life advice. Naruto nodded. "I know it's not easy, but at least we can try." Tsunade grinned. "I'm being lectured by a squirt." Naruto's eyes twitched. "Why does everyone keep mentioning my height? I'm only 10, damn it." At this, Tsunade laughed and Naruto frowned. But soon after, he spoke seriously. "Can I ask you something?" Tsunade nodded. "I always wondered after I got to know about my mother, why she was called Uzumaki instead of Senju. Our grandmother was Mito Uzumaki, was from the Uzumaki clan from the land of Eddies, which specialized in sealing arts," Tsunade answered. "My uncle wanted to learn that art. So he moved to that village, and later he got married to an Uzumaki woman and settled there with her, and they had Kushina. Kushina was brought up in that village among the Uzumakis before the village was destroyed at the start of the Second Shinobi War. So Kushina always preferred being called Uzumaki out of respect to her mother's clan." "I never knew Uzumaki was a clan," Naruto said in wonder. "I always thought it was just a name." "Of course it was a clan. The Uzumaki clan was the cousin clan of the Senju clan and one of the strongest clans in the world. The world knows that the Senju and Uchiha clans formed the Hidden Leaf Village. But there was also the Uzumaki clan, which helped stabilize the village. Even today, the shinobi of Konoha wear the symbol of the Uzumaki clan on their backs in honor of friendship and respect." "Seriously," Naruto said in surprise. He hadn't known any of this. He had been wearing his clan's symbol on his back throughout his life and didn't even know it. Just like that, they both talked more and slowly got to know each other better. Naruto told her about his childhood and also about his teammates and about some of the missions he had done in his short ninja career. Tsunade told him about Kushina and Minato and about herself. Finally, after such a long time, Tsunade felt happy. She had found her family. Time skip. Over the next 4 days, Naruto and Tsunade became quite close. They talked about their lives as he trained, and she had even given him advice on how to improve his chakra control after learning that he was not able to control it properly. In their short time together, he had even become good friends with Shizune. But today, Naruto and Jiraiya had to go back to the village. They'd been gone too long. You sure you don't want to come back to Konoha, Tsunade? Jiraiya asked. I need some time, she responded, then smiled at Naruto. But I'm sure I'll come to meet you with Shizune from time to time. Naruto nodded and smiled as Jiraiya said, well then, we must leave. It's almost a month since we left the village. I'm sure Sensei is worried. Tsunade bent to Naruto's level. She hugged him and whispered, I will come real soon to meet you, all right? Naruto hugged her back. Tsunade then stood and kissed him on his forehead, which made him blush. Goodbye, you two. Have a safe journey. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. See you soon. Shizune waved with a smile while holding her pig, Tauntaun, in her other arm. Naruto and Jiraiya said their goodbyes and started making their way back towards Konoha. After a while, Jiraiya noticed Naruto was smiling. You seem happy, brat. Well, of course I'm happy. I got Midoriya-san. He looked down at the green necklace in his hand, which Tsunade had given him. Wrapping his fingers around it, he held it in his pocket and continued his journey towards the village. When they'd arrived home and Naruto had reunited with his teammates, he'd had to listen to Yugao's nagging for not telling her and Hana before he'd left the village. But he'd explained to them that he'd went with Jiraiya to find his Obasan Tsunade, and they had quickly forgotten their scolding in their interest to know everything. Jiraiya had soon after left the village to continue his mission, and things had quickly settled back into a routine for Naruto and his team. Because of the training and tips he'd received from Jiraiya and Swanda, his chakra control improved daily, and he had finally completely mastered the Rasengan. Now, a month after his return to the village, Naruto was standing with his teammates at their usual training ground waiting for their lazy sensei. Shikaku had told them he had something important to discuss with them, and they were impatient to find out what it was. Finally, in a cloud of smoke, Shikaku arrived holding 3 papers in his hand. What are these, sensei? Naruto asked as their sensei handed the forms to them. Shikaku cleared his throat. I have some news for you. Chunin exams are going to start, and I nominated you all to participate. Really? Hana said with wide eyes. But are you sure we're ready for it? I mean, it's not that long since we became Genin. Shikaku shrugged. In my opinion, you're all ready for it. But I'm not forcing any of you. It's completely up to you if you want to participate or not. Even if you don't participate, you can try again in 6 months. I'm not going to wait that long, Naruto responded quickly. This is a good opportunity for me to test my abilities and rise up the ranks so I can take more challenging missions. Naru is right. This is a good opportunity for us. Count me in, Yugao said. Hana sighed. Well, I guess I could at least give it a try. I don't want to be left behind by these two. All right, if you've decided, just fill out the form. You have to be at the academy tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for the first round. Tomorrow? Hana asked. You can take today off for rest, Shikaku said, and ignored their stunned glances as he left. Naruto turned towards them. Well, see you tomorrow. And don't be late. With that, he disappeared with his crow Shunshin. Next day? The following morning, Naruto arrived at the academy where he saw his teammates waiting for him. Upon noticing him, Yugao folded her arms. You're finally here. Weren't you the one saying yesterday that we shouldn't be late? I'm not late. It's just that you're early, Naruto responded innocently. Yugao's eyes twitched at his response. Come on, let's move inside, Hana said. We have to find room 307. All right, let's go, Naruto said. When they got inside the academy, they saw teams from different villages talking amongst each other. Hey, Yugao, Hana, Hate called as he came towards them with Izumo and Kotetsu beside him. So you guys are also participating in the exams, Kotetsu said. You sure you can handle them? I heard it's quite difficult, and not just anyone can pass. You don't have to worry about us. We can take care of ourselves, Hana said with narrowed eyes. Hey, we don't have to fight. We're all friends here, Hate said. Naruto looked at the girls. We should get going. Hate ignored Naruto. So how have you been, Yugao? I'm fine, Yugao said, lifting an eyebrow. What about you? Fine, Hate said. I was just wondering if you would like to hang out after the exams are finished. I don't see anything wrong with that, she said, glancing at her teammates. But for now I want to focus on the exams. Naruto, who was walking ahead of them, heard their conversation and felt inexplicably annoyed when he heard Yugao accepting Hiate's offer. But banishing those feelings, he told himself that it shouldn't matter what Yugao did on her own time. He too had to concentrate on the exams. But still, he wondered if there was something more between her and Hate. And then he wondered where that thought had come from. Exam hall. When they arrived inside the exam hall, they noticed it was full with genin from all over the world. Some were much older than them. In fact, Naruto was the youngest of them all and soon began to get a lot of attention from all the present genins. Some were looking at him curiously, and some were glaring at him. Paying them no mind, Naruto stood at the corner with his teammates. Finally, a cloud of smoke appeared in the class, and some Chunin and Jounin stepped out of it. "All right, settle down, brats," the Jounin in the middle shouted. A long scar ran down his face and his head was covered by a bandana, which he was wearing as a leaf protector. He was wearing a darker version of the standard uniform of the Intelligence Division along with a black trench coat and gloves. "My name is Abiki Marino, and I will be the proctor of the first round of the Chunin exams." Naruto listened to him closely. "The first round will be a written test to gauge your intelligence. You will have 1 hour to finish your paper. If any of you are caught cheating 5 times, you will be disqualified along with your entire team." He then provided the question paper, and with that, the first round of the Chunin exams had started. For Naruto, the written exam was easy. He had seen when it started that the point of it was to make use of ninja techniques and cheat without getting caught by the examiner. But Naruto had all kind of knowledge tucked in his brain. The history of ninja wars, alliances, treaties, laws of uniformity among the different lands, fundamentals, advanced techniques, practical strategies in fighting, theory on physical ninja arts, Kekkei Genkai, introduction to chakra, and many other topics. There was no need for him to cheat. A balance of brain and brawn was the most important element of Naruto's ideal ninja. When there was first a clear mind, superior physical abilities could be amply shown off. But no matter how skilled in the ninja arts the body was, if a ninja was unable to make appropriate decisions, failure was almost inevitable. And in the world of ninja, failure was directly linked to death. He put his pencil down. After finishing his own test, he observed the other examinees as one after another they were ordered to leave, suspected of cheating. Some were slipping into the minds of their targets. Others were watching the movement of hands. Still others traced out the answers from the sound of pencils rubbing against paper. They were all cheating with the techniques they were best at. Everyone there was his rival. Even his teammates would compete against him at some point. If he could study their skills, he would be able to choose the most advantageous circumstances when they fought. Time. The examiner for the first test called out. "Put your pencils down. Everyone's still here. Go to the second exam." The result of the first exam will be announced once the second exam is complete. Question. One of the genin raised a hand. The supervisor nodded in permission to speak. "Does that mean that even if we pass the second exam, we won't be able to proceed to the third exam, depending on our score on the first exam?" "That is what it means, yes." At the examiner's response, the examinees all started to talk at once. "Quiet," the examiner shouted. "You are on the road to becoming Chunin. And once you are Chunin, you will be in the position of leading a team. Not all missions yield immediate results. There will sometimes be cases where you will turn all your mental energies towards the job at hand, while you are waiting on another result. During this exam, you should have expanded every effort, trust in your abilities, and fight in the second exam with all your might." Naruto stood and went towards his teammates, the words of the Jounin in his ears. "How did you do?" The questions were difficult for Genin level, but I was still able to answer most of them, Hannah responded calmly. "Come on, let's go," Yugao said. "We still have the second round to complete." Training Ground 44. All the Genin teams arrived at Training Ground 44 where the second part of the Chunin exams were going to be held. Naruto was standing with his teammates observing everything around him. There were a total of around 25 to 30 teams that were going to be taking part in this round. He was also waiting for further information on what they were going to do in this round. He could see some Chunin and Jounin level shinobi standing there. But what got his attention were the Umbu officers that were present. One thing he realized was that this round was not going to be easy like the last one. He had heard quite a lot about this particular training ground. It was very dangerous, and only Chunin and above-level shinobi had the permission to enter the field. But he didn't know what made this training ground so dangerous. A red-framed sunglasses-wearing Jounin called out, gathering everybody's attention. When everyone had given him their full attention, he started. Welcome to Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death. My name is Aoba Yamashiro, and I will be your proctor for the second round. Before we begin this test, I have something to hand out to you all. He took out forms from his jacket and continued. These are just standard consent forms. Before the test, you all have to read over this form and sign it. One random genin asked in confusion. But why do we have to sign it? The proctor adjusted his sunglasses before speaking. There's a very high chance of death involved in this. Some of you may not come back, and by signing it you agree that you will be taking part in this round at your own risk. Neither me nor the Leaf Village will take responsibility if anything happens to any of you in the forest. All the genins gulped after hearing him say that, and some of them were hesitating to continue the exams. Well, if you please hurry so that I can explain what you're going to do in the forest, the proctor spoke once again. Naruto had no hesitation on his face. He was not going to back down from it. He was fully confident in himself. He also had full confidence in both his teammates that they were capable of handling anything. He looked at them and asked, "Are you guys ready?" "Yeah," they both said to him with grins. They took their forms and signed them without reading them. After all the genins had signed their forms, the proctor started again. "All right, listen carefully everyone. I'll explain what you'll be doing in this test. This will test everyone's survival skills. Each team will be assigned a different entrance gate to enter the forest. In the center of the forest, there's a locked tower located 10 kilometers from each gate. It will be a race to reach the tower. But to enter the tower, your team needs to have both these heaven and earth scrolls." He showed them the scrolls in his hand. Half of you will receive the heaven scrolls, and the rest will receive the earth scrolls. So you have to fight to get both the scrolls. That means half of us will fail this test, a genin mentioned. I said it will be a race. We can't allow a large number of squads to pass this test for the next round. So only a number of teams will be allowed to qualify for the next round. Also, the team has to pass the first round. If not, they will be disqualified and the team behind them will take their place for the next round, the Jounin mentioned, shocking the genins. What? Were the cries of many genins present there? You can't do that. That's totally unfair. Rules are rules. One more thing, the test has a time limit. You will get 5 days to finish this test, and if a team loses a member or is injured heavily, then you cannot continue the test. And the most important thing you should know is that you must not open the scroll before reaching the tower. If you open it, then your team will be disqualified immediately from the exams. The Jounin proctor informed the genins. All right, please take your form over there. He pointed behind him. And exchange it for the scroll, and after that each team will be assigned a gate to be led inside. After finishing the whole process and getting a debrief, all the genin teams were standing at their assigned gates and waiting for the signal to enter the forest. Naruto was also behind the gates with his teammates. He was deep in his thoughts. This test was very tricky and had a very high chance of failure. Only a number of teams would be allowed to move to the next round. This exam was very important for him, not only because it was the Chunin selection exams. It was important for him because he wanted to test out his limits, and there was no other platform better than this. He wanted to dominate these exams. So how are we going to do this? Yugao spoke, clearly seeing what Naruto was thinking. A moment later, all the gates opened and they got a green signal to enter the forest. Wasting no time, Naruto and his teammates flew into the forest at high speed. They were jumping through the trees when Naruto spoke. "We're not going to waste our time in searching for the teams to fight. We are going straight to the tower." "But Naruto-kun, we need the Earth Scroll. Without that we can't enter in the tower," Hana pointed out, not understanding what Naruto was trying to do with that. Naruto stopped and Hana and Yugao both came to stop beside him. Naruto took out the scroll from his pouch and dropped his eyes to it. Those who would become Chunin were all scattered around in this forest known as the Forest of Death. The scroll in his hand had the character for heaven written on it in bold black calligraphy. They had to take the Earth Scroll from another team. But the big problem was how they should know which team had what scroll. And what if they attacked a team and still couldn't get a scroll they wanted? Then it would be a complete waste of time, which they couldn't afford. We can't afford to spend too much time in this forest. So we'll move directly towards the tower, and I will hold the scroll in my hand for others to see which scroll our team has. If the other team is carrying the same scroll as us, they will likely avoid fighting us to save their time. By this we can attract the team holding the scroll opposite of ours. Naruto said. It's a good plan, but it's very risky at the same time. Yugao said. This is the only option we have, if we want to finish in the top 4. Naruto stated and looked at Yugao. Also, you're a very good sensor, so you can sense any approaching team. Hana and Yugao both agreed with his plan. After realizing it was the best option they had, they started moving towards the tower at normal speed, while Naruto was holding the scroll, clearly showing which type of scroll it was. After running for hours, Team 12 still hadn't encountered any other team yet, but they knew that it was just a matter of time before another team came towards them. Just like their team was in search for the Earth Scroll, there were other teams that required the Heaven Scroll as well, which Naruto was holding openly. While in the forest, they learned why this training field was forbidden and known as the Forest of Death. They not only had to look out for the other teams, but they also had to keep their eyes open around their surroundings. The whole forest was filled with giant man-eating beasts, poisonous plants and insects, and all kinds of dangerous creatures. And if that wasn't enough, there were numerous traps set up throughout the forest. One thing clear to Naruto was that they couldn't afford to spend too much time in this forest. Even if the time limit was 5 days, if they spent that much time in here, they were not going to pass. So they had to complete this task as soon as possible. He was aiming to pass this test in a single day. As they were walking towards the tower, Yugao spoke, getting their attention. I sense there's a team approaching us. How far? Hana asked, wondering why she hasn't smelled them yet. Not too far. They will catch on to us in 4 or 5 minutes, judging by their pace, Yugao stated. Naruto spoke after thinking for a moment. I have a plan. I will be bait to lure them. You two hide your presence and wait for my signal. What's the plan? Yugao asked, looking at him carefully. I already told you go hide and wait for my signal. You will know when the time comes. Naruto responded. Come on, Yugao. We don't have time to argue. Let's go with whatever his plan is. Hana spoke in between them and got a nod from Yugao a moment later. They both quickly separated from Naruto, hiding themselves by masking their presence with a Jinjutsu, as Naruto started to jump through the trees at a slow pace, waiting for the approaching team catch up to him. He was jumping through the trees when he quickly had to dodge a kunai, which was thrown at him from behind. He jumped and landed on the ground. Just as he landed, 3 Genins surrounded him in a triangle formation. Running alone in a forest like this is suicide, kid, a boy said with a grin from behind him. As the 3 ninja were spread out in a triangle formation around Naruto, he looked at each one of them and noticed that they wore the protectors of village Takigakure on their foreheads. How can they even allow a kid like you to enter the exams? This time a girl spoke in a mocking way. Naruto looked at the boy standing in front of him, the most assertive of the group, maybe 15 or 16. He seemed to be the leader. If you hand over the scroll like a good boy, we won't kill you. But if you're going to fight back, then I can't promise anything, the boy in front said, as he was holding the scroll that clearly paired with the one in Naruto's hand, showing Earth written on it. It just as he had planned. Just as Naruto wanted the Earth Scroll, his opponent wanted the Heaven Scroll from him. They had fallen right into Naruto's trap. So, 3 against 1. Be good and dash. There's a requirement in the examinee qualification for this test. Naruto cut off the boy in front of him, that you have to participate in a 3-person cell. So why am I here alone like this? Poor kid, your teammates ditched you, the girl said from his left, like she was making fun of him. Turning his head a bit towards the girl, Naruto noted, the other 2 are waiting in the ambush. Can't you anticipate that much, at least? The careless smile slipped from her lips, and the girl's face grew pale. What's the point forcing us to hide? If that idiot was just going to tell them? Yugao muttered to Hana, as they were hiding in the trees waiting for his signal. Calm down. Well, yeah, Hana responded. Relax. I'm alone here. My teammates went in search for a team with a scroll, Naruto said, and turned his eyes back to the leader. The only conclusion you can come to from this 3 against 1 situation is that it's to your advantage. As a leader and as a chunin, you're a failure. Why you watch your mouth dash? You're even using my childish appearance as fuel for your carelessness. Naruto spoke, interrupting him. Naruto liked to play with his opponents' minds, to make them lose their confidence even before the fight could start. See, come on, let's just finish him already. The boy in the rear called out, sounding uneasy by how calm Naruto looked facing them. The leader swallowed with a gulp, the saliva building up in his mouth, sweat running down his forehead. Naruto could clearly see how uneasy he was making them feel. This had always been his game plan. When a person stops believing in himself, that's the moment they lose their fight. Why doesn't it make you uncomfortable that I'm here alone? Don't you think there's some meaning behind that fact that my team is doing this exam separately? Do you want to know the difference between my team and the rest? The difference is that my team is far superior to the other teams. Naruto spoke without showing any doubt on his face. He knew that he was sounding a bit arrogant, but it was necessary to put a doubt in his opponent's mind. The opposing team was starting to lose themselves in an unfavorable fear. Gee, get him! The leader half shrieked, half shouted, and shuriken were launched at Naruto from 3 different directions. In the next instant, the leader before Naruto and the boy at his rear both started running. The girl leapt up, aiming at him from the top. He was caught in an attack from both sides, and if he fled upwards, the girl would catch him. At the last moment, before shuriken could dig into him, he jumped in the air, avoiding the shuriken. The Taki Genin, seeing him jump in the air, thought that Naruto had fallen into their trap. The female member of the team grinned, seeing she got a chance to finish him off. She brought her sword down, and sliced at Naruto. Naruto wasn't able to block the sword as the blade went right through him. But in an instant, he completely dissolved in a murder of crows, shocking the 3 genin. He appeared again at a different side and a little away from them. Not understanding what had happened, the 3 ninja stood dumbfounded, looking at Naruto. I will say it again. Naruto spoke calmly, not showing any kind of worry as he held out his hand towards the leader. Be good and hand over the scroll. If you do, I'll let you go. Don't underestimate us, the leader stated, coming out of his shock. Then he started going through the hand signs. The boy and girl to his left and right also wove the same signs. Got it. Right, his teammates responded. Water style, the leader shouted, and that's as far as they got. Naruto signaled his hidden teammates as he got his opponents where he wanted them to be. Before they could even finish their jutsu, they heard Fong over Fong. Then Hana came to them spinning with her ninja dog, knocking them off the ground before the 3 genin could recover from the sudden surprise attack. Yugao landed beside Naruto and started waving quick hand signs, and coming to a stop, she looked at Naruto from the corner of her eyes. Naruto nodded at her. He knew what he had to do. With that, Yugao called out water style, water missile jutsu, and shot out a large missile made of water from her mouth towards the target. While she launched her jutsu, Naruto himself wove through the fast hand signs and called out his jutsu. Lightning release, lighting bolt. He thrust his palm forward, as a bolt of lightning current flew from his palm into the water missile. It was a combination of lighting and water that he and Yugao had come up with during their training sessions. As both nature elements complemented each other very well, it made their jutsu more powerful. As the electricity flowed through the water missile, it sped towards the fallen genins, who could do nothing other than watch in horror. The jutsu hit them, forcing them to cry out in pain because of the lighting current that went through their bodies. The jutsu died down, and the 3 genin were left heavily breathing on the ground. The jutsu was not dangerous or life-threatening. They hadn't put too much chakra into it because their goal was to just injure their opponents, not to kill them. This was a test. There was no need to kill or injure anyone. All they needed was to show their opponents their difference in power and make them lose heart. There were numerous cuts and bruises on the 3 Taki genins, but as they were still breathing heavier than normal, they slowly got to their feet. Fear could easily be seen on their faces. Their legs were trembling, almost giving out from under them from fear, but the 3 still managed to stay on their feet somehow. You're outclassed from the start. You cannot continue to fight us in your state. But if you still want to go, I don't mind. Naruto closed the distance between them. But if you do, Then this time, me and my teammates will not go easy on you. B bastard, you had us cornered from the start. Your two teammates were waiting for your signal to attack. The leader spoke, gritting his teeth. You made a mistake, jumping right into battle without thinking that it might be a trap, and you paid for it, Naruto stated, looking at them with his cold blue eyes. So what will you choose now? Will you hand over the scroll, or do you want to continue fighting? The female member of the group moved her pointed jaw up and down several times, wanting to say something, but couldn't speak because of the fear. The three of them were completely ruled by fear of death. Please let us go. The leader dropped to his knees and then reached a trembling hand into his bag and dug around for something. Naruto and his teammates stared at him for a moment, until the boy thrust the earth scroll at them. Naruto took the scroll. As long as you all understand. He sent a little chakra down his legs. Then he quickly went around behind their leader and brought the edge of his flat hand down on his neck. I can't have you attacking my team from behind. Take a little nap here. The genin collapsed on the ground as if prostrating himself, while Hana and Yugao both moved swiftly around behind their respected targets to deliver similar blows to each of them and knocking them out as well. Yay, we finally got the scroll. Yugao cheered happily and high-fived with Hana. We still got to reach the tower and hope we don't encounter another team on our way, Naruto called out. They both nodded at him in agreement, and Yugao spoke. Your mind games can really be scary sometimes. She and Hana were both aware of his habit of playing with opponents' minds, as this was not first time he had done something like this. During those times, he had a habit of saying something that he shouldn't say and could also sound arrogant, saying how superior he is from them and things like that. But they understood that he was not arrogant. He only acted like that to demoralize the opponent as part of his strategy. It was necessary to get them off guard. Naruto responded calmly. Come on. We got the scroll, and I don't want to spend any more time in this forest, Hana called out to get their attention. They nodded, now that they didn't have any reason to stick around there any longer. The two heaven and earth scrolls were together. Now they just had to head for the tower in the center of the training ground. With that, they started their journey towards the tower. They had no plans of stopping until they reached it, so they could get there as fast as possible. Following day, after running nonstop for hours, Team 12 arrived at the tower located in the center of the forest. After taking the scroll from the opposition team, their journey to the tower was quite easy. They hadn't encountered any other teams. Once they arrived at the tower, they noticed it was empty and that no other teams could be seen. They looked around to find someone to guide them from there, not knowing what they had to do. They finally just stood in the entrance room looking around. What else do we have to do now? Hana asked in confusion. What does this mean? Yugao spoke when she noticed writing on the wall. She walked forward and read out loud for the other two. If you do not possess heaven, gain knowledge and be prepared. If you do not possess earth, run through the fields and seek strength. If you open both heaven and earth scrolls, dangerous paths turn into safe ones. This is the secret. It shall lead you on your way. It's clearly referring to the scroll, Naruto mentioned, looking at the scrolls in his hand. It's telling us to open both the heaven and earth scroll. Hana and Yugao looked at him. You sure about it? We just have to find out by opening the scrolls, Naruto stated, and Hana took one scroll from his hand. As they both opened the scrolls at the same time, they looked in confusion at the weird pattern drawn in each scroll. Suddenly Naruto's eyes widened, and he spoke. This is a summoning seal. He threw the scroll forward from his hand, and Hana followed him doing the same. And suddenly a puff of smoke appeared in front of them. When it disappeared, a tiger-masked Umbu appeared from it. Members of Team 12 looked at him in confusion and asked, Who are you? The person in the mask responded, I am here to welcome you on completing the second round of the Chunin exam. Also, I was given the duty to pass the three of you a message. The masked Umbu then took out a watch from his pocket and looked at, and his eyes widened and a shocked look appeared on his face. But luckily his face was hidden by the mask, so the Genin team in front of him could not see his reaction. Time elapsed in the second round. 5 hours, 25 minutes. This is the new record for the exam held in the 44 training ground. This is most impressive, taking into consideration the fact that your team is one of the youngest in this exam. So congratulations on your achievement, the Umbu said. A little smirk appeared on Naruto's face, and Hana and Yugao both grinned happily and gave high fives to each other while shouting, "We did it! We're the best!" Naruto then looked at the Umbu in front of him and asked, "What are we doing from here, since we passed this exam?" The Umbu nodded. "Yes, your team completed both the first and second exam, so your team is allowed to enter the third round, which you will be notified about later when this round ends. Since your team completed this round in a single day, you will have to wait for the next 5 days here in this tower. Also, your Jounin sensei will be notified about you, so he will be here soon. You can go and rest now, and you aren't allowed to leave this tower. I will take my leave now." Then the Umbu vanished from his spot. Next morning, Hokage office. It was late in the morning, and the second round of the Chunin exam was still in progress. A lot of foreign shinobi and people could be seen in the village. The village's Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, stood near the window in his office. He was alone in the office at the moment because of the ongoing Chunin exam. He had a lot of work in his hand, but was quite concerned about Naruto, the youngest contestant in the exam. His team was not very experienced, and Hiruzen was wondering if it was right to allow him to participate in the exam. He got out of his thoughts when he heard the door opening and wondered who would come at this time of the day. Then he saw Danzo coming in the office with his usual emotionless face. "Hiruzen," Danzo addressed him, coming to stop at the front of the desk. "Danzo, what can I do for you?" Hiruzen asked him and sat on his chair. Danzo looked at him and spoke. "I got news that Naruto Uzumaki has successfully completed the second exam and had already reached the tower yesterday." Hiruzen's eyes looked at him straight. "Where did you get that news about Naruto?" "I got that information from the exam proctor. I'm keeping a close look on Uzumaki's progress in these exams," Danzo stated. "I would have never thought that you would waste your time on the exam," Hiruzen said, but was relieved to know that Naruto had successfully completed the second stage. Apparently, this year's exam got quite interesting because of Naruto Uzumaki. He has broken all the previous records this year. He completed the second exam in 5 hours, 25 minutes, breaking the last record of Minato Namikaze. Also, he scored the second highest score in the written exam of all time, only behind Minato, who holds the highest score of all time. Danzo informed him, sounding more excited than the number of years he had. But he soon composed himself. "I know he is very strong and talented, but to achieve this feat is quite impressive." Hiruzen spoke with pride in his voice and a little smile on his face hearing about Naruto. His worry washed up after learning this. Naruto is a shinobi of this village, and he can take care of himself, Hiruzen thought. He had proved this time and time again. It's also very good for the village's reputation that he is competing in this exam. Danzo spoke as a matter of fact. Hiruzen looked at him in confusion. "You know that the Chunin exam is a place where the officials from all the countries come together in the same room," Danzo spoke and continued. "Which is to say, it's an opportunity to display the future fighting potential of each land. When Naruto fights in the third round and demonstrates his abilities there, it will enhance the threat our village poses to other countries." Naruto is indeed a gifted ninja, but he is still inexperienced. There are a lot of other older and more experienced participants in these exams. Hiruzen knew all about the true motives of the Chunin exams. Also, you know, Danzo, that there is still stress between the nations. It's not that long that the Third Shinobi War ended. So this year, there will be no other Kage attending the exam other than some of their officials and maybe daimyos. Danzo nodded. Indeed, that's true, and that's more reason to show that Konohagakure is still producing prodigies like Naruto Uzumaki. His performance will be really good for the village reputation. There's a lot of talk about him already among the villages, seeing as he is the youngest contestant in this exam. Hiruzen nodded and was wondering if it was good for Naruto to get too much attention on him. If he continued to gain attention, there would be a possibility that the secret about his heritage would come out, and he would have forces after his life because of it. He got interrupted in his thoughts by Danzo, who asked, "So when is the third round taking place? I am looking forward to seeing Naruto Uzumaki in action this time." Hiruzen looked at him and said, "You are showing quite an interest in Naruto." This was also a matter of concern for him that Danzo was showing so much interest in Naruto. He had no idea of Danzo's true intentions, but he was aware that Danzo had ulterior motives. On the other hand, Even the astute Hiruzen would not realize just what those motives were. But he would not let Danzo use Naruto as he wanted, that was for certain. Well, as I told you before, we're not having any Kage of other villages, only officials, and the daimyos will arrive in a couple of days. So we will start the third round in 3 days' time, after the end of the second exam. Hiruzen informed him and got a nod from him in return. Time skip. After 5 days when the second round of the Chunin exams had ended, the teams that had passed both first and second rounds were standing in a huge arena with a platform on either side, and in front of the platform, the Hokage was standing with Jounin at his sides. Not many teams were able to pass the exams. Only 12 teams had reached the tower successfully with both scrolls in their possession. But unfortunately, only 4 teams were given the permission to continue the exams, and the rest were sent back because they had not been able to pass the first round. Naruto was standing in front of the line with his teammates beside him. The arena in which they were standing was filled with a lot of Jounin and Umbu. The Jounin senseis of all the participating teams were standing in front of them with the Hokage in the middle. There were only 2 teams from Konoha. One of them was Team 12, and the other one was Hate, Izumo, and Kotetsu. Of the other 2 teams, one was from Kumo, and last was from Taki. While standing there, the one thing Naruto noticed was that he and his teammates were getting a lot of attention from other teams, and not only from them, but also from the present Jounin and Chunin, who were all paying close attention to his team, and especially him. The news that Minato Namikaze's old record of being the fastest to complete this round in the Forest of Death had been broken by Team 12 had been spread around very quickly among the others after they had reached the tower. That Naruto was the youngest of the contestants was not helping them, though they could clearly see pride in their sensei's eyes when they looked at him standing there on the Hokage's right. The proctor from earlier stepped forward and spoke. Congratulations on passing the second round, everyone. But before we can move on to the third round of the Chunin exams, Hokage-sama would like to say something to you all. Listen well. After speaking, he stepped back to his place. Hiruzen stepped forward and cleared his throat before addressing the Genin teams present there. You all have my congratulations on passing the Forest of Death. But before the explanation of the third round, there's one thing I want to make clear to all of you. It's about the true purpose of this exam, he continued. We do joint exams with other shinobi nations to maintain good relations with the other nations and heighten the level of ninja. Do not let those reasons deceive you. This exam, so to speak, is the epitome of a war between the shinobi nations. The Genin looked a little uncomfortably at him. If what he was saying was true, then what did it mean for them? What do you mean, Hokage-sama? Kotetsu asked, looking at him nervously. If we go back through history, all the neighboring countries have fought each other over and over again. To avoid wasting military power, all the nations decided to choose a place to fight. That is the beginning of the Chunin selection exam. This exam does examine those who are worthy of Chunin rank. But, on the other hand, it's also a place where ninja fight and carry their country's dignity. In this third exam, feudal lords and famous people from various countries who may be potential clients are involved here as guests. And feudal lords from countries with hidden villages and village high officials will see your battles. If there's a significant difference in power, the strong country will be flooded with jobs, and weak countries' jobs will decrease. Why do we have to fight with the risk of losing our lives? A Kumo Genin spoke. Naruto spoke suddenly before the Hokage could speak. A country's power is the village's power. A village's power is the ninja's power, and ninja's true power is only born in life or death battle. This platform is a place to show off the ninja's power of one's country. Right, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen closed his eyes and nodded in agreement. Yes, this is a life or death battle for your dreams and village's dignity, Hiruzen stated. I wish you all the very best and hope you all will perform with best of your abilities. Hiruzen then signaled to the proctor to inform them about the third round. The Jounin stepped forward and spoke. The third round will take place in 2 days from now in the main arena of the village. You all will proceed as individuals from here. The third round will be one-on-one fights. So if any one of you want to forfeit from the exam, it will not affect your team. 2 hands raised from the same team from Taki. We got injured in the forest and will not be able to fight. So we both would like to step down from this exam. The proctor nodded at them and looked around the genin for anyone else, then spoke. All right, the remaining 10 of you will proceed, and the third round will be in 2 days from now. Get as much rest you want in these 2 days. We will see each other in the stadium. The lineup for your fights will be decided there. That's all. The village hidden in the leaves buzzed with activity. Even though it was early in the morning, a lot of people could be seen walking the streets and chatting with each other. And they weren't only locals. Quite a few from other villages could be seen among them. Today was the day for the finals of the Chunin exam, where young genins would showcase their talent and skills in hopes for getting promoted to the Chunin rank. Because of that, a lot of people, such as clients, daimyos of the various nations, and village officials were in the village to see the performances, either for their future business or, in some cases, future threats. A single figure looked over the buzzing activities from the top of the Hokage monument. Naruto stood there, fully geared up in a high-collar black long-sleeved t-shirt with the Uzumaki symbol on his back, gray pants, and his black shinobi sandals. It was a very important day, one he knew he'd remember all his life. It was the opportunity for him to rise in the ranks and finally face more challenging situations. He was really starting to get impatient doing all those chores that they called missions. He knew that for him to get promoted, he would need to show the higher-ups that he had the abilities and mindset to reach Chunin rank. But he wasn't worried. He had full confidence in himself that he would be promoted. But that was not the only goal he had in mind. He wanted to dominate this tournament and win it. He wanted people to remember his name. He wanted to leave a mark at the end of this exam. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. Because of his age, a lot of people didn't think he should be allowed to continue in the exam. But he knew it wasn't the first time a genin around his age was participating in the Chunin exam. He didn't pay much attention to those kind of matters, though. He knew his Ji-chan would handle those things. The only thing that mattered to him was his village, and he wanted to see his village on top of these exams. That's one of the reasons he wanted himself to be the one dominating. He had been training alone with his sensei and had done everything he could to be 100% ready for the finals. He hadn't even seen his other 2 teammates who were busy in their own training with their families. Though he wondered if he should call them his teammates, since they were both going to be his opponents in the finals. He turned his head to look back and saw his sensei walking towards him. A small smile came to Naruto's face as he turned fully to face him. Sensei, what are you doing here? I thought you'd be busy with the other clan heads. Shikaku smiled a little, but still maintained the lazy look on his face and shrugged. There's still some time left for the finals to start, so I decided to check on my students. So you already met Hana and Yugao? Naruto asked. I haven't made any contact with any of them in the last 3 days. Both troublesome women looked quite eager to fight in the finals. Shikaku added, and Naruto chuckled at his sensei at the mention of the word troublesome. So are you ready for the finals? Naruto nodded. Hi, I am ready. I have full confidence in myself. Though the only opponents I'm worried about are Hana and Yugao. Shikaku nodded in understanding. That's understandable. They're the only ones who know about you using your Sharingan and fooling your opponent with Genjutsu. But Naruto, don't get too overconfident and underestimate other genins. Also, I advise you not to rely on your Sharingan too much. You have to show off your other skills for the judges to promote you. I know that, sensei, and I am not overestimating anyone. I've worked on my other skills beside the Sharingan, Naruto insisted with a smile. I'm only using it as a last resort, so don't worry about me getting overconfident. Good to hear that. Shikaku muttered and patted Naruto on the head, which resulted in an annoyed look from him. Naruto hated when people treated him like a kid, and he knew Shikaku knew that. Shikaku only laughed at the look on Naruto's face. Well, good luck for the finals, brat. I should get going now. I have to be with the other clan heads. Naruto nodded. Thank you for training me, sensei. I will make you proud of me. Ah, troublesome, Shikaku muttered in response. Don't mention it, brat. It's my job. Well, anyway, I'll be taking my leave. See you at the stadium. Shikaku walked off, waving goodbye, and left Naruto alone. Naruto turned around and looked over the village once again. He had first thought of going to meet up with Hana and Yugao, but decided against it in the end in favor of being alone. Stadium. Sometime later, all the genin contestants had gathered in the middle of the stadium and were talking among themselves and waiting for the finals to start. Naruto knew each one of them had trained hard for this moment, and they were all here to represent their respective villages and wanted to make their village stand out from the others. Naruto stood with his arms folded and an impassive look on his face. Hana and Yugao stood at his side. As he looked around the stadium, he was impressed with the amount of people who were present in the stadium. A curving wall swept in and around the circular grounds, while the ceiling was rounded and open. The grounds were covered in dirt, and trees grew here and there. Scaffolding stretched out horizontally, protruding from the top of the walls where a large number of spectators were waiting for the matches to start. There were daimyos and people from the ruling classes in all lands, officials from the villages in the ninja world, Chunin, Jounin. There were no empty seats. Some were making bets on participating genins, and a buzz of excitement hung in the air. Which village would stand with the responsibility for the future of the ninja world on its shoulders? This place, where capable genin from every village risked their lives in battle, was a microcosm of the battlefield. Not infrequently, the fights here were directly connected with the power structures among the villages, which was exactly why Naruto had to show off his true power. Naruto wanted to demonstrate such overwhelming strength that the adults gathered there wouldn't so much as think of laying a hand on Konoha. He had absolutely no intention of going easy on anyone, even if he had to fight against his own teammates. He was going to give this everything he had. "You better be ready, Naruto-kun," Yugao said, getting his attention. Naruto looked at her and raised a single eyebrow in confusion. "What do you mean?" Yugao faced him with a serious look. "I have trained hard for this, and I don't plan on losing to anyone, especially not you. Your cheap dirty tricks will not work on me, so you better be ready for me." Naruto smiled at her. He was not surprised by her attitude. He knew how serious and determined she was with her training, and that was the thing he liked about her. She wasn't like the other girls he had seen in the academy. Naruto had always secretly admired her, and he was kind of jealous of her. Her sword abilities were far better than his, and he knew he couldn't match her in that department. Also, battling against Hana and Yugao would not be easy because they knew his secrets and how to counter them. "I'm not here just to fight, I'm here to win," Naruto responded with a smirk. "So don't expect me to go easy on anyone." "I don't expect you to go easy on me," Yugao replied with her own smirk. "TCHH, hope you two idiots didn't forget about me. I'm also waiting to fight both of you." As Hana spoke, her companion barked in agreement. "I'll kick your ass anytime, Hana," Yugao responded smugly. "And who knows, maybe I'll end up winning this whole tournament." Naruto yawned as he listened to Yugao. This got an annoyed expression from her, and a tick mark appeared on her forehead. "Keep dreaming, you idiot," he said. "What's taking them so long? Why haven't the matches started yet?" Hana wondered, confusedly looking around. "The Hokage has yet to arrive. Everyone's waiting for him, I guess," Naruto pointed out with a shrug as he looked at the balcony where the Hokage were going to be sitting. He saw some of the clan heads were already sitting there, and among them, he could see Shikaku, who nodded at him upon noticing his gaze. "Wow, your observation skills always amaze me, Naruto-kun," Yugao stated with a hint of sarcasm in her tone. Naruto sighed a little. He had gotten used to her by now, and he knew she would never miss an opportunity to pull his leg. So he just responded with his own sarcasm. "Why, thank you, Yugao-san. I didn't know you thought so highly of me." Hana chuckled at his answer, while Yugao looked annoyed and glared at Naruto while muttering curses under her breath. "Stupid Naru, stupid blonde." Before they could continue their talk, they were interrupted by the arriving Jounin. It was Aoba, the same Jounin who had been the proctor in the second round. He came to a stop before the group of genin. "Welcome to the finals of the Chunin exam. I think you already know me from before, so there is no need for introduction. I'll be the proctor for the finals. Hokage-sama is going to start the proceedings, so please be quiet." Just as he finished, all the spectators started cheering, and Naruto noticed the third Hokage standing in the balcony. The Hokage raised a hand up, commanding the crowd to settle down. Immediately the crowd went silent, and he cleared his throat a bit before speaking. "Welcome everyone to the finals of the Chunin exams." Loud cheers went throughout the stadium. "We will now begin the main matches with the 12 genin that have come this far. Please enjoy the matches, and I wish all the contestants the very best." The crowd continued cheering loudly after the Hokage's welcome speech, and Naruto could feel the anticipation in the air. Meanwhile, Aoba looked at the contestants in front of him and spoke. Before we start, you need to check out who you're going up against. You're each going to participate as an individual. He pointed toward the display screen. The pair-ups will be shown on the screens in a moment for the first round. All the contestants looked at the screens closely as they turned on, and then looked at their opponents. The first match was going to be between Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha against a genin from Kumo. Naruto looked at the boy. He was from the Kumogakure village, and looked 4 to 5 years older than himself. If Naruto remembered correctly, this boy was one of the favorites in this tournament. But to Naruto, the boy looked average. But he also knew he should never underestimate any opponent. Aoba again called out to get their attention. All right, the first match will be Naruto Uzumaki versus Yashiro of the Hidden Cloud Village. The rest of you need to go back to the waiting room. Both the genin stepped forward and looked at each other, while the rest of the genins nodded and started to move. Hana and Yugao both wished Naruto luck before they left to wait for their turn. Now only the referee, Naruto, and his opponent Yashiro stood on the battlefield looking at each other. Yashiro was standing lazily and didn't look interested at all. Naruto stared at him in confusion. Before starting the fight, Aoba spoke again. There are absolutely no rules for how to fight. The contest continues until one will admit defeat. However, when I judge that continuation is impossible, the match will be stopped there. You both understand. Stands. The Hokage sat in the stands and waited for the fight to start. He was showing his professional expression, but on the inside, he was very excited to see Naruto show off some of his skills. To his side, his advisors were also sitting with his former teammates and some of the clan heads, such as Hyuga, Inazuka, Nara, Akimichi, Aburame, and Yamanaka. Everyone was here to see the potential of the young shinobi. I am very excited to see what your student can do, Shikaku. I have heard quite a bit about him, Inoichi Yamanaka said. Before Shikaku could respond, Danzo spoke. I'm also looking forward to seeing what he can do. He has been excellent throughout the tournament so far. Everyone is looking forward to seeing him in action, Hiruzen said. Since the news of him and his team breaking the record of Minato Namikaze, they've been the center of attention, especially Naruto. He looked down on the battlefield to see Aoba explaining the rules to the two genins. It'll not be easy from here for him, Hamura stated. His opponent Yashiro is considered quite strong in his village. Also, the boy is much more experienced than Naruto. Some of the others in the room nodded. I can assure you all that my student can handle himself very well, Shikaku said confidently. Some often underestimate him for his age, and he just takes advantage of that. Well then, it'll be good to see what the prodigy of the Hidden Leaf can do up against the prodigy of the Hidden Cloud. Danzo spoke with a barely visible smirk on his face. This match was what he had come to see. Show me what you can do, Naruto Uzumaki, he thought. But he failed to notice the narrowed look from Shikaku Nara, who was keeping a close look on him. Field. Back on the field, the opponents stood facing each other. The whole crowd watched in anticipation for the fight to start. By this time, Yashiro had yawned a number of times, to the point where Naruto wondered if he might actually fall asleep on the spot, and whether he would be able to fight like that. Maybe we should have them push our turn back, so you can get a proper sleep? Naruto asked his opponent. Yashiro looked at Naruto, his eyelids hanging halfway over his perfectly round eyes. No need to worry, he said to Naruto, smiling, but even his smile looked sleepy. Naruto couldn't do anything other than nod at him. He wondered if his opponent was doing it on purpose. If he wasn't, it was apparent the boy was not taking him seriously. First round, third exam, Konohagakure Ninja Naruto Uzumaki against Kumogakure Ninja Yashiro. Start, the proctor shouted. Ha! Yashiro opened his mouth in a great yawn as the start signal was given. There was a smattering of whispered laughter in the venue. Naruto frowned. Yashiro was insulting him with his behavior. Getting into position, Naruto leaned forward slightly and braced his feet. He had no weapons in either hand. He relaxed his entire body and set his awareness adrift, not concentrating on any particular spot. He was ready to react immediately, no matter what his opponent did. I'm so sleepy. Yashiro stood up straight, arms dangling loosely at his sides, looking as though he was not in any kind of ready position, and then started to wobble from side to side. If you're not going to fight, then maybe you should give up, Naruto said, annoyed. But before Naruto's response had even been completed, Yashiro's eyes closed and his stiff body pitched forward, like a stick falling to the earth. And suddenly, before he slammed into the ground, he was gone. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, and he took a sharp breath. Where did he go? There had been no hint of movement in his opponent. His action was too sudden. He hadn't seemed to be shifting his weight to either side. A snore then came from behind. Thunder. Naruto immediately tumbled forward in a somersault only a split second before Yashiro's right arm flew past the front of his face with incredible force, white electricity turning into countless bolts of lightning all the way up to the shoulder. So he has lightning affinity. Though it's to be expected since he's from Kumo, Naruto thought as he landed, getting some distance from his opponent. He was cursing himself for losing his concentration. He could have been defeated in a single move if he had been hit by that lighting-covered arm. But when Naruto spun to face Yashiro, he was astounded to see that the Kumo Jinin remained asleep. Was it an act? Or was he really sleeping? There's no way he can fight while sleeping, Naruto thought. But he was. The only way to find out was to attack him directly. Naruto pulled a kunai from his kunai pouch and in the flash of a movement, threw it straight toward the face of the sleeping Yashiro. His body, rocking from side to side, shook violently and just barely dodged the kunai. He has to be awake, Naruto thought. But the boy's eyes remained closed, making Naruto's Sharingan useless. Even if Yashiro's eyes were open, though, Naruto wasn't sure he wanted to show too much in his first fight. He also didn't want to waste too much of his chakra. Yashiro stood upright, still sleeping, as though the attack of the previous moment hadn't happened. Just when Naruto noticed him swaying violently once more, Yashiro disappeared from his field of view again. Faster than the eye could follow, Naruto shot up into the sky, just before Yashiro's lightning-covered arms swept through the spot where Naruto had been standing. Landing near the wall to put some space between them, Naruto caught his enemy in his field of view. His thoughts were racing at a dizzying speed. In the formula for an overwhelming victory, the Sharingan was essential. But he needed to keep it aside until that time came. But he was also confident he could unravel the phenomenon of Yashiro's sleeping jutsu without it. Think. He stared at Yashiro, wobbling off in the distance. He had to assume that his enemy was using a type of technique that brought out the full potential of his physical abilities through the selfless state of mind that was sleep. By sleeping, he kept his ego in check, and he could carry out specialized movements through pure instinct and animal intuition alone. His opponent's somnolence had surprised him, so he had lost sight of the fact that this fight was basically about physical abilities. If he simply concentrated on his physical abilities, he could easily stand in the same arena as this boy. He focused all his attention on the enemy before his eyes. Wobbly Yashiro twitched. He was coming. Vision, hearing, scent, all his senses went into full gear. He felt Yashiro with everything he had. He caught his aura tracing the walls to his right. Lightning. He dodged. So I'm physically superior, after all, Naruto realized. Once he knew that, it was possible to deal with this. With flowing movements, he evaded the attacks launched from Yashiro's selfless dream state. He then had a flash of insight. Why did his enemy specialize in a technique that relies on sleeping? Naruto imagined what his enemy thought about while he was asleep. If he was sealing away his self to increase his physical abilities, then there was the real possibility that he lost his memory as well. If that were true, then Yashiro didn't remember the self who fought. If I can wake him up, I can win, Naruto thought. But why did Yashiro need a technique like that? He wondered if Yashiro was a coward. If the boy was escaping into sleep because he was afraid of being hurt. If Yashiro was a coward, maybe he was afraid of the endless sleep, the one he never woke up from. You had to have your eyes open to carefully examine a situation. That moment would clinch his victory, Naruto knew. The back and forth of Yashiro attacking and Naruto dodging lasted about 10 minutes, and just when people in the arena were starting to fuss about the lack of any real developments, it happened. Yashiro stopped abruptly, shook faintly, and lifted his closed eyelids the tiniest bit. Their eyes met. This was the moment Naruto had been waiting for. He poured his chakra into his eyes. The Sharingan was activated but still hidden from the world. It took less than 100th of a second to activate, and Naruto was betting on that moment. He hammered into Yashiro's pupils the detailed image he had drawn in his mind while dodging attacks. Yashiro shrieked. Awake for a mere instant, he fell asleep once more. I did it. He slipped around from the rear and slit Yashiro's throat with his kunai. It was the image Naruto had imagined so faithfully, down to the very last details. And it became reality in his enemy's mind. He was dead, his throat slashed. He opened his eyes again. He apparently couldn't sleep as soundly anymore. Yashiro tried to fight, and Naruto dodged the ineffective attacks for a few minutes before his opponent closed his eyes again. He was probably trying to activate his sleeping state again. But Naruto knew that as soon as Yashiro closed his eyes, his field of view would be dyed red. This time, the image was of Naruto gouging into his stomach. Each time he was killed, Yashiro's sleep grew lighter. Stabbed, strangled, beaten, poisoned. Naruto killed the boy any and every way possible. Finally, Yashiro stopped trying to sleep at all. If he closed his eyes, he would die again. Naruto was sure that after being subjected to brutal deaths over and over and over, his opponent was now completely ruled by his fear of the final sleep. Chest heaving, almost hyperventilating, Yashiro trembled and shook. Naruto continued to evade his attacks, while Yashiro's movements gradually grew sluggish. Sweat streamed down his face. He started to cry, and Naruto hadn't once used a physical attack on him. Help me, Yashiro groaned in supplication. He fell to his knees and began weeping loudly. I don't want to die anymore. Please, help me, please. We have a winner. The examiner stepped in between the two of them. Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure. The arena fell silent. Everyone seemed to be confused by the situation. Yashiro wailed and wept until he was carried out in the examiner's arms. I don't want to die, he cried over and over, the terror in his voice reaching into every nook and cranny of the stadium, sending shivers up spines. He would probably give up on being a ninja now, Naruto thought. That was the level of fear that had been put into him. The venue felt the same. Naruto had, all by himself, produced the aura of death that wafted through the entire arena. He wasn't sure how many people there had realized he had been using Jinjutsu on his opponent. It didn't matter. Naruto had demonstrated incomprehensible power, and the ninja from all lands now knew his unfathomable strength. We mustn't make an enemy of this boy. Naruto felt bad for Yashiro. After it was over, he knew he had gone too far. But he had to win without showing much of his other abilities. And that had been the only way he could think of. Naruto looked at the balcony where the Hokage and some of the Konoha higher officials were sitting. He then turned his back on the arena and walked towards the waiting area where the rest of the contestants were present. In the silence, he could hear someone clapping. He lifted his head and looked in the direction of the sound. A face, covered on the right side with bandages. Danzo Shimura, Naruto murmured, not attaching any of the honorifics he should have to the name. Stands. I must say, I'm impressed with your student Shikaku, Hayashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan stated. Troublesome, Shikaku muttered lazily. That brat went overboard. Hiruzen nodded, but his face was troubled. He fought well, but he shouldn't have done what he did to that boy. Don't be foolish, Hiruzen, Danzo spoke a little loudly. He performed extraordinary and put a fear in the enemy's mind. Even on the defense, he was far ahead of the enemy. He has my vote for the promotion. I agree with Danzo-sama. He used great tactics against his opponent, Inoichi Yamanaka said. But how was he able to cast a Jinjutsu on his opponent? Hamura asked. I didn't even see him use any hand seal for the Jinjutsu.